Chapter 20, which is Romanticism, and then we're going to start watching a video on planes. And then tomorrow we'll finish the video, and I'll review you guys for your test on Wednesday. And then Thursday we start your new chapter, chapter 21. And we'll take notes Thursday and Friday. Today's notes are short, though. Covers the Romantic movement. We're going to go over some of Romanticism's basic tenets or characteristics of Romanticism. Romanticism was an intellectual movement, and it was a reaction against the Enlightenment. What do we know about the Enlightenment? It was called the Age of what? Reformation. Not Reformation, but it does start with an R.
Reason.
Reason. It was the Age of Reason. We didn't study it together, but typically the Enlightenment goes hand in hand with the scientific revolution. There's a lot of the same ideas about the world operating like a clock, everything's mathematical, everything has its place. That was the whole idea behind the Enlightenment. Empiricism, doing research. You know, only things that could be proven were real. So the Romanticism is against that. It's a reaction against the Enlightenment. Instead, the Romantics valued things like emotions, feelings, intuition, imagination. These were the things that were important to a Romantic. So the writers, the musicians, these are the things that they relied on. So it's a reaction against the Enlightenment, a reaction against reason, and instead more focus placed on emotions, feelings, intuition, and imagination. What's intuition? There's a gut feeling, like sometimes they'll say twins have a special kind of intuition, like one twin gets punched in the face and the other twin feels it. Is that true? Yeah. Twins?
Call it twin tuition.
Colin, why do you have twin tuition?
I heard about that. My teacher in 6th grade told us when he said his brother was like playing basketball or something, and like he had like a pain in his leg, and his brother came home and he had broken his leg.
Yeah. There's no, I mean, there's some like weird, creepy things like that that happen that there's no scientific explanation for. It's just something weird. They'll say mothers have an intuition, like if something happens to their kid that day, then a mother just knows that something's wrong. So once again, no scientific explanation, no mathematical explanation. It's just this weird thing that people believe in. So these are the things that the Romantics used to help them write, to help them compose music. Imagination was particularly important to the Romantics. This is something they valued because they felt like it was lost. As you get older, you become less and less imaginative. So the Romantics focused on children, and not in like a creepy old man focuses on a child kind of way, but they looked at children and they loved their spontaneity, and they loved the things that they could come up with. And one of the writers said the reason why children were so much more imaginative is because they were closer to their eternal origin. So having just been born, they weren't fazed by all of the things that make us become less imaginative. I'm sure when you guys were little, how many of you had imaginary friends that you talked to? Okay. I don't see many of you still talking to your imaginary friends. So either one, they're not there, or two, you learned that that's not socially acceptable in class to start talking to your friends, and so you quit doing that, at least in front of other people.
Just you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening.
We have all become so much less imaginative, because now, what are some things that are important to you? What are things that you think about daily? Friends.
The opposite gender.
Girlfriends. Are you looking at Ashley when you say that? 'Cause
No.
Oh, he's looking at you and smiling. Oh, that was cute. Grades, driving a car, your family, all of these things start weighing on you, and then you become not as fun and not as imaginative. I used to be fun and imaginative, and it's gone. I have not an ounce of imagination left in me. But when I was little, I mean, I talked all the time to different people, and I used different voices, and then my mom would cry, send me off to a therapist because she thought I had multiple personality disorder. And then you learn very quickly to quit being imaginative because mommy cries when you use different voices. That happens to all of you. Nobody's still sitting there talking to walls or licking them or whatever it is because it's now weird. It's no longer imaginative. That's why the Romantics liked little children. All right, think of all the things that you did when you were little, before iPads or whatever else. I mean, the things that you could come up with and think about, it was endless. So those are the kinds of things that they like. That's why folk stories, fairy tales, these are the kinds of things the Romantics like to write about. So what's their favorite time period going to be? Let me give you an example of romantic does not necessarily mean love. For them, romance could be fights to the death, duels to the death, suicides, potions, dragons. Medieval time period, or the Middle Ages. They tended to romanticize that time period, although we know the Middle Ages was death, starvation, and violence, but they're going to put a spin on it and romanticize it. So the favorite time period for the Romantics, definitely the Middle Ages.
Like the Renaissance period?
The Renaissance period, So how many of you have ever seen Moulin Rouge? Okay, so that would be kind of this time period. Those artists and those writers in that movie would be Romantics. That kind of bohemian lifestyle. What are bohemians? It's like a 19th century version of a hippie. It's kind of like a wanderer, all right? Artsy, creative. Who's seen Princess Bride? Giants, duels to the death, potions. That would be another romantic kind of movie. They were also obsessed with dreams and hallucinations. This is how they thought they got their best work done. So they would often make themselves altered, induce some sort of hallucination or dreamlike state so that they could get their best work done. They were fascinated with the way the mind works when you're dreaming or when you're hallucinating. No rhyme or reason to it, absolutely nothing makes sense. People that sleepwalk, all of those things that are crazy, but those mind-altering states, that's where they thought the people were their most creative or their most artistic. Yeah.
So they got high, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. But they took other things. I don't think they were smoking weed back then, but they would take other things to alter their state. Nature and spirituality. These things were of utmost importance to them. Remember when we did the DBQ on Manchester, the very first DBQ that you did? One of the documents was by Robert Southey, the English Romantic poet. And what was he saying about the Industrial Revolution? You remember?
Wasn't it like killing the romanticism and the nature?
Yeah, I mean, Robert Southey, that English Romantic poet, was talking about the blackened skies and how everything's crowded because he thinks that it destroyed nature and spirituality. Nature and spirituality through art. That's what these writers, musicians, playwrights, that's what they really valued. So a lot of times the Romantics are going to write about sunflowers and dewy canyons with mists off the ocean, whatever, nature-y things. So what's their view of industry, meaning the Industrial Revolution? They hated it. They referred to the factory as satanic mills. They thought it was killing not just nature, but beauty. They thought it was causing materialism, capitalism. People were becoming greedy instead of appreciating the beautiful things in life. So they have an extremely negative view of industry. Now, when we start reviewing for the test tomorrow, I'll make sure that if there is anybody you need to know specifically what they wrote, I'll tell you tomorrow. But as far as the romantic writers and musicians go, I'm not sure if any of these people you have to know exactly what they wrote. But you should be able to look at these names, look at the names of these writers, and know that they're romantic writers. Or look at the name of the composers and realize they come from the romantic time period. That you do need to know. So, some of the famous romantic writers or poets would be Wordsworth, Byron, Keats. Do you read these your sophomore year? Shelley?
Shakespeare.
All you do is read Shakespeare?
No, but.
Is that an O-N or an E-N
Doesn't
in Byron?
follow, like, poets and stuff.
Those are some of the writers, Wordsworth, Byron, Keats, the Grimm brothers. I think most of you are probably, how many of you watch Grimm? Anybody watch that show on TV? Nobody watches it? I don't either, but it seems like it would be popular. The Grimm brother fairy tales, Cinderella, Rapunzel. Disney took them and made them more kid-friendly, because the Grimm brother fairy tales are pretty, they're a little more violent than Disney's.
Cinderella, doesn't like the stepsisters' eyes get gouged out?
Yeah, and then when they can't get their foot in the slipper,
They
they
cut
chop them off, so they can get them stuck in there. So Disney doesn't have that version for kids. But the Grimm brothers, the German brothers, the fairy tales. Victor Hugo is another romantic writer. What did he write? Les Mis, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So those are some of the romantic writers. Once again, I will let you know if any of them specifically are on your Chapter 20 test that you need to know what they wrote. But as of right now, just recognize them as romantics. Romantic music. It's going to change drastically. It is tripled in size. The orchestra is tripled in size. Way more instruments are going to be added to the orchestra. And some of the famous romantic composers that you need to know, Beethoven, Chopin, Tchaikovsky. I'm almost positive you don't need to know any of the things that they actually composed, but just know that they're from this time period.
How do you spell Beethoven? Is that E-E?
Beethoven.
That's a Chopin?
Chopin. See it, yeah, like chopping.
What was the one that's like born for death?
Wow.
Was that Beethoven?
Yeah,
He was deaf. Right?
Beethoven was deaf and Mozart. Who was deaf, Mozart or
Mozart.
Beethoven?
I think it was Beethoven.
No, it was Beethoven.
I thought Mozart was deaf too.
I think the
No,
child
he's
was deaf.
just a child like.
Beethoven's the one who's deaf.
No, that was Van Gogh. That was Van Gogh.
Oh, I'm not, that's not, I don't even know what's wrong with it.
I remember in Benchmark we learned a Beethoven's Wig song
Well, yeah,
Alright,
to the tune of
oh my god.
new directions in continental religion. So, what happened to religion during the Enlightenment and during the scientific revolution? How did it change? Okay,
It wasn't like as, like, I don't know the word, but like as strict
Influential.
or like orthodox, I guess.
okay, people started to question their faith during the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. Because with this need to have everything proven, people started to not believe everything that the church was telling them. And so a lot of people lost faith during the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. Now, Romanticism is a reaction against the Enlightenment. So what happens to religion?
It becomes super important.
It becomes important again.
Did it skip Roman numeral 8?
I did, yeah.
Okay, I was just like,
Yeah.
I was thinking.
I went from 7 to 9. So new directions in continental religion, passion, emotion. These things start to play more of a role in religion. So now, whereas before, during the scientific revolution, everybody needed proof. The world, the Newtonian worldview. The world operated like what machine? A